You are going to listen to a conversation between two people, a customer and a representative of a company which rents cars. There are three alternative answers, A, B and C, for each question. Decide which alternative is the most suitable answer and circle the appropriate letter. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now the test will begin. Remember, you will hear the recording only once, so answer the questions as you listen. Now listen to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 6.
Thank you for calling Carline. So that we can best help you, can you please press the star button on your phone now? Thank you. Now choose one of the following 4 options by pressing the buttons on your telephone. Press 1 if you would like to make a car reservation. Press 2 if you would like to talk to someone about a car reservation. Press 3 if you would... Please hold while we put you through to one of our assistants.
Good morning, Melanie speaking. How can I help you?
My name is Mr. Maxine, and I booked a car several days ago to be picked up from Heathrow Airport in London, and I'd like to change the booking.
I see. Have you got a reference?
Yes, I have it here somewhere on a piece of paper. Here it is. It's A for Alpha, C for Charlie, F for Foxtrot, Y for...
Yeah.
Yes. The number 15, 15, A for Alpha, and G for Go.
Let's see. Can I just check that? ACFY15AG.
Yes.
Mr. John Maxine.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, so how can I help you?
I booked a car for 3 days from this Friday at 6 p.m. to Monday at 6 p.m.
Yes, a manual.
I'd like to change it for a larger car and an automatic rather than a manual. And I'd also like to book it for 5 rather than 3 days.
Okay, let's have a look. We have an estate which is automatic.
Yes, that would be perfect.
There is a difference in price, though.
For the extra 2 days?
Yes, but also for the size of the car. The estate is £15 more expensive per day than the saloon car you have already booked.
Okay, and how much extra is it altogether then?
That makes it an extra £165.
It seems rather expensive. The last time I hired one, it wasn't so much.
When was that?
Several weeks ago.
I see.
Before the speakers continue their conversation, look at questions 7 to 10. As you listen to the rest of the dialogue, complete the numbered spaces 7 to 10. Write no more than 2 words or a number for each space.
Well, it's basically because the rates change daily according to the cars available. The estate is the last automatic we have for hire for that period. We have a manual estate which is cheaper, if that would help.
No, it has to be an automatic.
OK. Shall I debit your card for the extra £165?
Is it possible for me to pay the extra in cash when I pick up the car at the airport?
I'm afraid that isn't possible, as there are no facilities for handling cash at that time of the day.
That seems odd.
It's because the money can't be banked in the evening, and for security reasons, no cash is held on the premises.
OK, you can debit my card.
You'll have to give the number to me again.
Isn't it logged on the screen?
For security reasons, it doesn't come up on the screen when we look at the booking. Any changes, and it has to be entered again.
I see. It's 34459911.
3445 9911
4425
4425
7750.
7750. OK, that has now been authorised. Shall we send the receipt to your Park Vale address?
Yes, number 40.
Is there anything else I can help you with, Mr. Maxine?
No, nothing else, thank you.
Have a nice trip.
Thank you. Goodbye.
That's the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 2. You will hear Joanne describing her home city of Darwin in Australia to a man called Rob, who hopes to go there. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15 on page 67. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Joanne?
Hi, you must be Rob. Nice to meet you. So, I hear you're planning to visit Australia.
Yeah, and I really wanted to talk to you because I was thinking of spending some time in Darwin, and my sister told me you're from there.
That's right.
So, tell me about it.
Well, where shall I start? Well, Darwin's in what they call the top end because it's right up at the northern end of Australia, and it's quite different from the rest of Australia in terms of cultural influences. In fact, it's nearer to Jakarta in Indonesia than it is to Sydney, so you get a very strong Asian influence there. That means we get lots of tourists. People from other parts of Australia are attracted by this sort of international cosmopolitan image. And as well as that, we've got the same laid-back atmosphere you get all over Australia, probably more so, if anything, because of the climate. But what a lot of the tourists don't realise until they get there is that the city's also got a very young population. The average age is just 29, and this makes the whole place very buzzy. Some people think that there might not be that much going on as far as art and music and dancing and so on are concerned because it's so remote. I mean, we don't really get things like theatre and opera in the same way as cities down in the south like Sydney, for example, because of the transport expenses. But in fact, what happens is that we just do it ourselves. Lots of people play music, classical as well as pop, and there are things like artists groups and writers groups and dance classes. Everyone does something. We don't just sit and watch other people.
You said it's very international?
Yeah, they say there's over 70 different nationalities in Darwin. For instance, there's been a Chinese population there for over 100 years. We've even got a Chinese temple. It was built way back in 1887, but when a very bad storm, a cyclone in fact, hit Darwin in the 1970s, it was almost completely destroyed. The only parts of the temple that survived were part of the altars and the stone lions. But after the storm, they reconstructed it using modern materials. It's still used as a religious centre today, but it's open to tourists too, and it's definitely worth going to see it. Oh, and as far as getting around goes, you'll see places that advertise bicycles for hire, but I wouldn't recommend it. A lot of the year it's just so hot and humid. Some tourists think it'll be fine because there's not much in the way of hills and the traffic's quite light compared with some places, but believe me, you're better off with public transport. It's fine and not expensive. Or you can hire a car, but it's not really worth it.
What's the swimming like?
Well, there are some good beaches, but the trouble is that there's this nasty creature called the box jellyfish, and if it stings you, you're in bad trouble. So you have to be very careful most of the year, especially in the winter months. You can wear a lycra suit to cover your arms and legs, but I wouldn't like to risk it even so, personally. And there are the saltwater crocodiles too. I mean, I don't want to put you off. There are protected swimming areas netted off where you'll be safe from jellyfish and crocs, or there are the public swimming pools. They're fine, of course.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
So, which places would you specially recommend?
Well, one of the most popular attractions is called Aquascene. What happens is every day at high tide, hundreds of fish come in from the sea, all different sorts, including some really big deep sea fish. And some of them will even take food from your hand. It's right in the middle of town at the end of the esplanade. It's not free. I think you have to pay about $5, but it's definitely something you have to experience. Then, of course, Darwin has a great range of food, being such a cosmopolitan place. And if you don't have lots to spend, the best place to go is to Smith Street Mall, where they have stalls selling stuff to eat. There's all sorts of different things, including Southeast Asian dishes, which I really like. You'd think there'd be plenty of fresh fish in Darwin, as it's on the coast, but in fact, because of the climate, it mostly gets frozen straight away. But you can get fresh fish in the restaurants on Cullen Bay Marina. It's a nice place to go for a special meal, and they have some good shops in that area too. What else? Well, there's the Botanic Garden. It's over 100 years old and there's lots to see. An orchid farm, rainforest, a collection of palm trees, a wetlands area. You can easily spend an afternoon there. That's at Fanny Bay, a couple of kilometres out to the north. Then, if you've got any energy left in the evening, the place to go is Mitchell Street. That's where it all happens as far as clubs and music and things are concerned. You'll bump into lots of my friends there. Talking of friends, why don't I give you some email addresses? I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you...
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
to Part 3.
Part 3.
You'll hear a lecturer talking to students about sport in Ireland.
First, look at questions 21 to 23. As you listen, answer the questions.
Now, today we're going to be finding out about the most popular sports in the Emerald Isle. That's Ireland, of course. Can you guess what they are? Well, there are these two lesser-played games, a form of rounders and Gaelic handball. But we'll start with one which is perhaps over 3,000 years old, arriving in Ireland with the Celts, some claim. That may be a slight exaggeration, but I consider it to be the fastest field game in the world, and it goes by the name of hurling. Well, that's what it's known as in the English-speaking world anyway. So, what do you have to do? You've got 15 players on a team, one of them the goalkeeper. Each one has a stick called a hurley. Here you are. I've brought mine along. Had it since I was at school. This is what it looks like, and basically you have to get this ball, called a sliotar, that's S-L-I-O-T-A-R, so it's not spelt the way it's pronounced. You hit it into the net for 3 points, or you can hit it over the net for 1 point. The goal looks like the letter H, with the net under the crossbar. The goalie has a bigger stick than the others to help keep the ball out. You can also catch the sliotar and run with it for 4 steps maximum, or bounce it on your stick. Is that clear to you all? I'll be showing you a video a bit later, so you can see what a game actually looks like. You might like to think of it as a mixture of lacrosse, hockey, and baseball. Oh, and it's played by women too, but it goes by the name of camogie in that case.
Before the conversation continues, look at questions 24 to 30. Now listen to the second part of the discussion.
I'll give you a bit of the history, shall I now? Generally, the golden age of the game is considered to be the 18th century. But systematic rules were first agreed and drawn up at that great shrine of learning, Trinity College Dublin, in 1879, founding the Irish Hurling Union, closely followed just a few years later by the formation of the Gaelic Athletics Association. With greater organisation last century, the All-Ireland Hurling Championship got off to a flying start, and I'm proud to say that my own native city of Cork has won more than 20 titles over the years. But then, so have Kilkenny and Tipperary. Is it only played in Ireland? No. Well, it is the only country with a national team at the moment, but you may be surprised to discover there are hurling clubs in London, as well as in America and Argentina, to name just a few. The other game I'd like to take a little time to introduce you to is Gaelic football, which is played on the same pitch as hurling with the same number of players, but there's no net. You just have to get the ball over your opponent's goalposts. And you can do that by kicking or punching the ball. However, you're not supposed to do that to the players, I might add. Imagine it as a combination of soccer and basketball, But in my opinion, it's a more exciting spectacle than either of those. Excuse my bias, if you will. It's also very popular with women. In fact, there are more women's teams than for any other sport. Whether despite or because of the physical contact involved, I wouldn't like to say. They do play a shorter game, 60 minutes, rather than the men's 70. So, let's have a look. If we can have the lights down, I'll see if I can get this technology to work.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You are going to hear a talk about universities and colleges in Britain. As you listen to the talk, complete the notes below.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Every year, thousands of young people want to study in Great Britain. They come from a range of backgrounds and have varying expectations of what their study in the country will be like and how to apply to the university. Today, I'd like to talk on universities and colleges in Britain. There are 45 universities, 30 polytechnics, and about 1,000 major technical, commercial, education and art colleges in the UK. In 1973 to 1974, there were over 251,200 full-time students in universities, of whom almost 10% were from overseas. A total of nearly 276,350 students attending full-time courses in establishments of further education, and about 130,270 in colleges of education. University first degree courses in arts and sciences are normally of 3 or 4 years duration, and, with very few exceptions, students are not admitted for any shorter period of study. The academic year normally extends from October to June and is divided into 3 terms. Information about courses and entrance requirements should be obtained by writing direct to the university at least 12 months before the proposed date of admission. All applications for admission are dealt with by the university's Central Council on Admissions, the UCA, to which all candidates seeking admission to a full-time internal first degree course or a first diploma course of more than 1 year's duration must apply. Full details of the admission procedure are to be found in the UCA Handbook, How to Apply for Admission to a University. A copy of this handbook and the standard application form should be obtained from the UCA at P.O. Box 28, Cheltenham and Gloucestershire, GL 501HY. The application form must be returned to the UCA by a stated closing date, usually in December, October for Oxford and Cambridge. The UCA will continue to send application forms to universities for consideration at their discretion for a limited period after the 15th of December. but candidates are strongly advised to ensure that their application forms reach the UCA by the stated closing date to help their chances of selection. Candidates who fail to obtain a place in the initial selection period are automatically put into the clearinghouse scheme in June-July, when these candidates' application forms are again sent to those universities which still have vacancies. Students from the following countries should send their application forms to the UCA via the Overseas Student Office of their own country in London: Bahamas, Brunei, Cyprus, Ghana, Guyana, India, Luxembourg, Singapore, Tanzania, Thailand and Uganda. Graduates of a university in Britain or overseas who wish to take another first-degree course should approach the university concerned to inquire whether it wishes them to apply direct or through the central UCA scheme. Now, let's turn to transfer. It is very rare for a student who has begun a first-degree course at one university in Britain to transfer to another British university with a view to completing it there. And there is no provision for the automatic granting of credit for university studies already undertaken. Students who have already completed some university-level study should make inquiries directly with the individual university. To be considered for admission, a candidate must show that his earlier education has qualified him to enter the course and that he speaks, writes and understands English sufficiently well. The usual minimum qualifications for entry to a first-degree course in a university are good passes in the General Certificate of Education, the British School Leaving Examination, either 3 passes at ordinary level and 2 advanced level, or 1 at ordinary level and 3 at advanced level. A certificate which gives admission to a university in the candidate's own country will be taken into consideration for admission to a British university, but a university may still require passes in some subjects of the GCE, or an equivalent examination. It should be noted that possession of the minimum entrance requirements does not guarantee admission. Selection is competitive, and each application is judged on its merits. The British Council offices overseas and the Schools Council, 160 Great Portland Street, London W1N 6LL, are prepared to offer advice on the acceptability of specific overseas qualifications in place of the British General Certificate of Education. A copy of the original certificate and, where appropriate, an approved translation should accompany all inquiries.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.